The Fisherman Who Never Left, the Phantom Canoe of Loon Lake, Washington. Now folks, I don't scare easy. I've been out in the woods at night, heard coyotes argue over bones, and watched my uncle wrestle a snapping turtle for the last beer in the cooler. But there's something about Loon Lake, Washington that'll make the hair on the back of your neck stand up like a porcupine on a lightning rod. See, up here in the northeast corner of the state, about 20 miles north of Spokane, there's a lake so still it can hold a secret for 100 years and not even ripple. Loon Lake, named after the birds. But if you ask the old-timers, the loons ain't the only ones who call it home. If you're enjoying this tale, folks, give us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories from the wild side of America. The story goes way back to 1897, when a fella named Jedediah Jed Kitteridge came out this way chasing trout in solitude. Jed wasn't your average fisherman. He was the kind of man who'd talk to his worms before he baited them, apologize to the fish after he caught them, and argue with the weather when it didn't suit him. Folks said he could smell rain 2 counties away, and that he once caught a 20-inch rainbow trout using a button and some chewing tobacco. Jed lived in a one-room shack on the east side of the lake, and he fished every single day, rain or shine, winter or wildfire. But one night in late October, he rowed out onto the lake just before sunset and never came back. They found his canoe 3 days later floating upside down near Loon Lake Point. His tackle box was still inside, his fishing hat too, but Jed himself? Gone. No body, no sign, not even a ripple. Now most folks figured he'd capsized, drowned, and sunk to the bottom. But some of the locals, well, they started hearing things.
The first to notice was a logger named Pete Carver. He swore one foggy morning he saw a canoe drifting across the lake with a man sitting inside. Motionless, just fishing, line in the water, no sound at all. Pete yelled out to him, "Hey, you out early too?" The man turned his head, smiled, and vanished like smoke.
Then came the 1920s, and the legend of the Fisherman Who Never Left was born. Campers said they'd hear the creak of oars at night, but when they looked out, the lake would be empty. Others said their lanterns flickered whenever they told Jed's story by the fire, like the man himself didn't appreciate being gossiped about. A pair of Boy Scouts in 1946 reported seeing a phantom canoe glide past their campsite. They said it made no sound, not even water lapping, and the man inside wore an old canvas hat pulled low over his face. They could see right through him. The scoutmaster didn't believe him till he checked their tent the next morning and found lake water pooled around their sleeping bags.
Now, I ain't saying ghosts are real, but in 1978, 2 fishermen, both Vietnam vets, tough as boot leather, told the Spokesman Review newspaper that a transparent boat came up beside him around midnight. One of the men swore he heard an old voice say, "They're biting deep tonight." The other said he just heard laughter.
But here's where the story gets twisted. In 2003, a local sound engineer named Mike Rowan moved to Loon Lake to record ambient nature sounds for a documentary. He set up microphones all around the shoreline to catch loon calls and water sounds overnight. When he played the recordings back, he heard what sounded like gentle oar strokes. Then a man humming an old sea shanty, bound for the Rio Grande. The thing is, the microphones were facing away from the water, and there were no boats out that night. When Mike filtered the sound, he found a faint voice saying, "Got one," followed by a splash. He thought it was a prank till he checked the timestamps. The voice came exactly 106 years to the day after Jed Kitteridge vanished. Now, every year since, folks around Loon Lake say if you sit by the shore on that same October night, about 10:17 p.m., you'll hear it too, the creak of wood, the swish of water, and that same quiet hum. The modern twist? In 2017, a couple from Spokane caught something strange on their drone camera. They were filming the sunset over the lake when, for about 3 seconds, a shadowy canoe appeared in the footage. No wake, no waves, just floating still. The man in it seemed to be looking right at the drone. But when they checked the raw file later, the canoe was gone. Frame by frame, pixel by pixel, erased, like it had never been there. They posted the clip online, and it blew up in local ghost circles. Paranormal investigators came, setting up heat sensors, night vision cameras, sonar. One group claimed they recorded a faint image of a canoe under the surface of the lake, sitting perfectly preserved, like time forgot it. Another team swore their EMF meters spiked every time they dropped a fishing line in the same area Jed disappeared. To this day, Loon Lake has a reputation. One of Washington's calmest, clearest, and most haunted bodies of water. And every now and then, on still nights when the fog hangs low and the loons go quiet, campers say they see him. A lone figure out on the water, just sitting there, casting his line, waiting for that one last bite. Some say if you call out to him, he'll just tip his hat. Others say if you get too close, your boat motor will stall and you'll find your gear rearranged by morning, hooks tied in knots, bait missing, and your best lure floating out by itself in the middle of the lake. But me, if I ever see that old ghost fisherman, I ain't gonna bother him. Man's been fishing for over a century. He's earned some peace. Still, if you ever find yourself camping up near Loon Lake, bring an extra lantern and maybe a little tobacco to toss in the water. You never know. Old Jed might appreciate the company. Just don't look too long. You might catch more than you bargained for. Now, if this story wasn't strange enough, you ought to hear what's come up since folks started poking around with their fancy gadgets and ghost apps. See, around 2019, a college group from Spokane decided to do a Ghost Lake podcast up at Loon. They brought all kinds of equipment: sonar, radar, pizza, and zero common sense. First night out, they drop a hydrophone into the water, and at about 2 in the morning, they pick up what sounds like real clicks. Not a motor, not an animal, just the soft, steady zit-zit of a fishing reel turning in the dark. Now, that's creepy enough, but here's the kicker. The water was frozen solid. They posted the audio online, and you can hear it plain as day, like someone sitting just beneath the ice, patiently fishing under another century of bad decisions. Then there's the cell phone phenomenon. Locals say if you stand on the east shore of Loon Lake near the old Kitteridge homestead site, your phone will lose service, even though there's a full signal everywhere else. But it's not just a dead zone. Folks say their phones will start playing music all on their own. Old fiddle tunes from the 1800s, the kind of songs nobody's streamed in 100 years. One gal claimed her Spotify started displaying a track called Jed's Jig. Ain't no such song, ain't no such artist. Now, one of my favorite pieces of twisted trivia, the Loon Lake Fish Derby mystery of 1953. Every summer the locals host a fishing competition, right? Well, that year, something weird happened. When the winning fish was weighed in, a monster rainbow trout, the scales jammed and sparked. When they reset it, the fish was gone, just vanished. Not flopped off, not stolen, just disappeared.
The old-timers shook their heads and said, "Guess Jed wanted that one for himself."
And if you go out on a foggy morning just before sunrise, sometimes you'll see ripples near the middle of the lake, like something heavy breaching the surface. No fish that big's ever been caught up there, but the ripples move in perfect circles like something is casting, reeling, and casting again. There's another story too, about the Loon Lake Lighthouse, or what's left of it. Most folks don't even know there was one. Built in 1902, more for decoration than navigation, it was manned by an old Civil War vet named Ephraim Blake. In 1904, he wrote in his logbook, and this is an actual historical record, "Seen the fisherman again tonight. Boat drifted past without wind. Heard him say, 'They're not biting today.'" That's the last entry in the book. When they found the place weeks later, the light was still burning. No Ephraim, no footprints. But they say if you camp near those old stone ruins, the air smells like pipe tobacco and trout bait. Now here's where it gets real twisted history. In the 1960s, when a developer tried to build a big old resort on the South Shore, they brought in divers to map out the lake bed. Those divers came back shaken, said they found a perfectly preserved wooden canoe nearly 60 feet down, sitting upright, no algae, no decay, and a skeleton-sized shadow sitting inside it. When they went back the next day with better cameras, poof. Canoe was gone. The lead diver quit the job and moved to Arizona, said he'd rather dig holes in the desert than swim with ghosts. Now, I don't know what you believe, spirits, echoes, time loops, or just plain old campfire nonsense, but there's something about Loon Lake that don't let go of its stories. Even scientists can't explain it. Water samples taken near where Jed vanished show trace levels of iron and, well, something unidentified. It reacts to light, glows faintly green when exposed to flash photography. Locals call it fisherman's glow. Some say it's just minerals. Others whisper it's Jed's way of marking his favorite spot. There's even talk that the loon birds themselves act different up there. Some of them reportedly follow boats, circle overhead, and call out 3 times before diving. Old-timers claim those are the ones that belong to Jed's spirit. They say if you hear 3 loon calls in a row, you better reel up and head back in, because the man in the canoe don't like competition. And you know what's weirdest of all? The few people who've claimed to see the phantom fisherman up close, they all describe him the same way. An old man, big beard, old canvas hat, sitting calm as a Sunday sermon. But they also say he looks right at them, tips his hat, and smiles. Not a mean smile. More like he knows something we don't.
One woman even said, "When I looked in his eyes, I saw my granddad fishing again."
So maybe the phantom canoe ain't a curse. Maybe it's a reminder that not everything gone is lost. That sometimes the lake keeps what it loves. But still, I wouldn't go out there after dark. Because sometimes, when the wind dies down and the fog settles, you'll hear a voice drift across the water saying,
Got one.
and if you do, you better hope he ain't talking about you.